So I've divided the book up into 4 sections. And the first section is just, or 4 parts if you like. The first part is a revelation of the good news of grace. If you're born again, it means at some stage in your life you were impacted by grace, whether you knew it or not. I was impacted by grace. Religion came later. For me, but maybe for others it was different. But if we are born again, we've known that we got something we didn't deserve. He got what we deserved, so we can get what he deserved. He got our sin, so we could get his righteousness. But along the way, there's a little bit of confusion that comes in, and I just think it's good to take a section of the book and just talk about how good this good news is and what it actually means. The second part of the book we've called Correctly Dividing the Word of God. And this has to do with those of us after we got born again and came into grace, before we got into all kinds of other legalistic religion stuff. We got given a Bible. Some of us understood it quicker than others. But for the most part, we just read it as a devotional book. But at some stage, we wanted to study it to find out the depth and the background and the significance. And part of our journey again, in just revisiting the gospel of grace, in all its grace, has been to get back to the Word of God. And I think we've been part of that journey for 4 years. Trying to get back, not just with little pretty 3 points in a poem on Sunday messages, a devotional feel good, let's get to the week, 3 ways how to be a better mother, 4 ways to be a better father, 7 ways to face a blue Monday, 10 ways to, not shoot your mother-in-law, 11 ways how to cope with hardship. I mean, the topical preaching is great, and we should find it. But we also got to get to the nitty-gritties of biblical regeneration, biblical sanctification, biblical justification. What is the gospel? And I think we've taken time. And we can't reinvent the wheel every year on that. But we've covered a whole lot of those topics in this section. And also given tools how to approach the Bible to study it correctly. And that was part of our journey, but I've tried to capture that also simply. You get very thick textbooks on these topics written by people with very thick glasses. Huh? And they've spent years, and they could take one of the pages on this book and write 15 volumes out of it. That hasn't been the objective here. The objective here is that the youngest, newest Christian in the church should be able to understand it. Like Dave Gibbon, when he saw this the other night, he said, "Sure, this book's a lot thinner than I thought." It's a little bit thicker than this. But the goal is to keep it as simple as possible. And then, so there are questions. There are questions that we've faced along the way. There have been some joys. There have been some disappointments. There have been some challenges. And then there were a whole lot of questions that got asked over and over again. And some of these caused us to get back to the Word and say, what do we believe on this topic? What do we believe on that topic? Let's go thrash it out, study. And you know what? At the end of it all, we don't have all the answers for everything. But we're a lot further down the road than we were. Then the 4th section of the book we've called A Church Still Under Grace Construction. And the reason for this is because we haven't arrived yet. But we have left, and we are on our way. But we haven't arrived, we haven't got it all together, but we are certainly getting to grips with something of what we want the future to look like. Like I think it's Steve Covey says, start with the end in mind. Start at the beginning with the end in mind, or something like that. In other words, we got to know what kind of culture we want to see. We were singing this morning. I don't know if you caught it. There's a moment right in the beginning of the worship. It's for freedom that you've been set free. It's for freedom that you've been set free. It's for freedom. When we understand what that freedom looks like, that means freedom from addiction. That means freedom from religion. That means freedom from man-pleasing. That means freedom from stinginess. That means freedom from fear. That means freedom from self-destructiveness. That means freedom to worship God with all I am and all I can, knowing that He's more loving and more kind than I could ever imagine Him to be. You get a church full of people like that. It matters little if it's 10 people in that church, 50 people, 1,000 or 20,000. That's the kind of church that is a worshiping church. That's the kind of church that is going to produce His fruit on earth.